Manufacture of consent makes sure that the ignorant and meddlesome majority keeps out of things. So if they want, for decades, they've wanted national health care, but they don't understand, so keep them out of it. If they want higher taxes on the rich, put them to the side. They don't understand things. They're opposed to wars. It's because they don't understand how important it is for us to bomb Libya, whatever it may be. It used to be in earlier times that you could use force to do this. But by the early 20th century, countries like England and the United States, the more free societies, it was recognized that force was no longer sufficient. So you had to turn to control of attitudes and opinions. This is quite conscious, incidentally. So yes, you're perfectly free once you you internally accept the principles. And you feel under no pressure and censorship. You can say anything you want, as long as you accept the concept of objectivity. They can do exactly what they want, but they wouldn't be in that position unless they already accepted the framework. I.F. Stone is a perfect example. He's a terrific reporter, maybe one of the best, but he didn't accept the rules, so he was out of the system. Same with innumerable others. Jeremy Scahill, Glenn Greenwald, Amy Goodman, even Matt Taibbi. In a journalism school, you're taught to be objective. And objective means report accurately what's going on within the beltway, so inside the system of power. If you report that accurately, you're objective. If you go outside that, you're biased. Well, plenty of things outside that. This is a narrow, concentrated power system.
Over the past several episodes, I've been breaking down different pieces of how the left operates, how they use historical lies like the stolen land narrative to delegitimize America, how they control the media through corporate consolidation, how they keep people trapped in childish dependency and emotional thinking, how their indoctrination machine works. But now I need to put all of those pieces together. Because they're not separate problems. They're parts of a coordinated system designed to control how you think, what you believe, and how you see yourself and your country. This is the complete picture. This is how the left has built a machine that takes independent thinking individuals and turns them into obedient sheep who will believe anything they're told, support policies that harm them, and attack anyone who tries to wake them up. And once you see the whole system, once you understand how all of the pieces fit together, you can't unsee it. You'll recognize it everywhere. You'll see it in every news broadcast, every university lecture, every corporate diversity statement, every political speech. This is the matrix. This is the programming. And most people are so deep inside it, they don't even know it exists. But you're about to understand exactly how it works, how the media consolidation enables the narrative control, how the narrative control produces the historical lies, how the historical lies create the guilt and dependency, how the guilt and dependency keep people acting like children who need the left to tell them what to think. It's all connected. It's all deliberate. And it's all designed to destroy your ability to think independently and resist their control. Let me show you how it works.
Courage, compassion, faith, freedom, truth. Welcome to Courage in the Darkness with your host, Philip Roberts. It's time to awaken America.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces. But
we are concerned about the troubling trend of irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
Plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly
It's so common.
And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
this is extremely
We don't
dangerous to our
live in a
democracy.
democracy.
This is extremely
we live in a
dangerous to our
constitutional
democracy.
republic.
This is
Extremely dangerous.
dangerous to our democracy.
Dangerous.
Extremely dangerous. Our democracy.
extremely
Dangerous to our democracy.
The left's control system has three main layers that work together to create a complete ideological capture. Think of it like a building. You need a foundation, a structure, and a roof, right? Each layer serves a specific purpose, and together they create an environment where independent thought becomes nearly impossible. The foundation is media consolidation. 6 corporations control virtually everything you see, hear, and read in mainstream media. Comcast, Disney, Warner Brothers, Discovery, Paramount, Fox, and the Bezos media empire. These aren't independent voices. They're owned by a handful of billionaires with specific political and financial interests. Brian Roberts controls NBC and MSNBC. Bob Iger controls ABC. The Ellisons control CBS. The Murdochs control Fox. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. These men and their corporations decide what stories get covered, how they get framed, and what narrative gets pushed. The consolidation is critical because it creates narrative uniformity. When 6 companies control most media, they can coordinate messaging without explicit conspiracy. They share the same business model. They answer to the same investment firms like BlackRock and Vanguard. They benefit from the same regulatory environment. They have aligned interests. So when they all push the same narrative about an event, when they all frame issues the same way, when they all ignore certain stories while obsessing over others, it's not because they've independently arrived at the same conclusions. It's because they're parts of the same system serving the same interests. This creates the illusion of consensus. When every network says the same thing, people assume that it must be true. When every newspaper frames an issue the same way, it seems like objective reality rather than coordinated messaging. That's the foundation. Control of information flow, control of what reaches the public and how it's presented. The second layer, the structure built on that foundation, is narrative creation. Once you control the media, you can create and maintain narratives that serve your political objectives regardless of their truth. The stolen land narrative is a perfect example. It's historically illiterate. It's logically inconsistent. It requires ignoring that all land everywhere has changed hands through conquest. It requires pretending that indigenous peoples didn't conquer each other. It requires applying standards to America that you don't apply to any other nation. But it doesn't matter that it's false. What matters is that it's useful. It creates guilt. It delegitimizes America. It makes citizens ashamed of their country. It creates a permanent sense of moral debt that can be exploited for political purposes. So the media pushes this narrative relentlessly. Land acknowledgements become standard in corporate and academic settings. The language of settler colonialism becomes normalized. Anyone who questions it gets labeled as racist or defending genocide. And because all 6 major media corporations push this narrative, because it's reinforced in universities and in corporate diversity training, because it's repeated endlessly without challenge, it becomes accepted truth for millions of people who never think to question it. That's how narrative creation works. Take a useful lie, repeat it across all media platforms, punish dissent, wait for it to become normalized, then use it to justify the policies and attitudes you wanted all along. The third layer, the roof that completes the structure. It's psychological conditioning. This is where the system produces the childish, dependent, emotionally driven behavior we see from the left. The media doesn't just tell people what to think, it teaches them how to think. It conditions emotional responses. It creates tribal identities. It builds defense mechanisms that protect the programming from challenge. When someone's been conditioned by this system, they can't process information that contradicts their beliefs. They've been taught that certain sources are illegitimate. They've been taught that certain questions are dangerous. They've been taught that disagreement equals hatred. They respond to facts with emotion. They throw tantrums when challenged. They follow authority blindly because they've never developed critical thinking skills. They act like children because the system has kept them in a state of perpetual immaturity. This isn't accidental. The left needs people to stay childish and dependent. Adults ask questions. Adults demand evidence. Adults think for themselves. Adults are hard to control. But children believe what they're told. Children follow authority. Children can be manipulated through emotional appeals. Children are easy to control. So the system is designed to prevent people from growing up. Keep them in the bubble where they only hear approved messages. Keep them dependent on authority figures to tell them what to think. Keep them emotional and reactive rather than logical and analytical. Now here's where these three layers work together to create total ideological capture. The media consolidation ensures message control. The narrative creation produces useful lies that serve political objectives. The psychological conditioning makes people incapable of recognizing or resisting the lies. It's a closed loop. The media creates the narratives. The narratives shape how people think. The conditioned thinking makes people dependent on the media to tell them what's real. Round and round it goes, with each cycle deepening the programming. And the beauty of the system, from the left's perspective, is that it's self-reinforcing. Once someone's been fully captured, they police themselves. They don't need external censorship because they've internalized the rules about what thoughts are acceptable. They don't need to be told to dismiss conservative arguments because they've been conditioned to see conservative sources as illegitimate. They don't need to be ordered to get emotional when their beliefs are challenged because that emotional response has been trained into them. The system has produced autonomous agents who enforce the programming without conscious direction. That's the ultimate goal of any indoctrination system. Make the subjects police themselves. This is what we're up against. Not just biased media, not just bad arguments, not just people who disagree. A comprehensive system designed to capture minds and prevent independent thought. Understanding the system is the first step to fighting it, because once you see the architecture, once you understand how the pieces fit together, you can start dismantling it in your own life and helping others break free.
I have a quote for you here that's been making the rounds on social media about the deportation of criminal illegal aliens. We are a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our laws, and I believe they must be held accountable, especially those who may be dangerous. That's why over the past 6 years, deportations of criminals are up 80%, and we're going to keep focusing on threats to our security.
I think that policy comes from a place of white American nationalism. Donald Trump has kind of embraced this rhetoric of racism and xenophobia that is not beneficial to our country at all. This administration has totally not done anything moral.
This is really awful. We just have to advocate for those kind of people, and people in Congress like Ocasio-Cortez, who is helping people overcome these kinds of things.
Campus reform, quizzing college students from one of America's elite schools, Georgetown University. They're quick to call the president racist, obviously, but it turns out that Obama made that statement, not Donald Trump. Now see how they respond.
I thought it was the Trump administration that said something like that.
It never occurred to me that it could be Obama.
Do you think it's still a practice of white nationalism, though, to deport criminal illegal aliens?
I think the way Trump's doing it is. I don't know a ton about Obama's deportation policies, but I imagine that they were a lot more humane than the ones currently going on.
It costs $54,000 a year to attend Georgetown. Think about that. Are they getting their money's worth?
Let's get specific about how this system turns independent people into obedient sheep who will believe anything the left tells them. It starts in education. Universities are the primary indoctrination centers where young people get their first serious exposure to leftist ideology. And the educational approach is specifically designed to produce dependent thinkers rather than independent ones. Instead of teaching students how to think, how to evaluate evidence, how to construct arguments, how to recognize logical fallacies, universities teach students what to think. They present approved narratives as unquestionable truth. They punish dissent. They reward conformity. Critical theory, post-colonial studies, gender studies, all academic disciplines built around leftist ideology. They don't teach analysis. They teach dogma. Students memorize the correct positions on race, gender, colonialism, capitalism. They learn the approved vocabulary. They internalize the moral framework. And critically, they learn that questioning these positions makes you a bad person. Not just wrong, morally deficient. Racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic. The labels are designed to create shame and fear around independent thought. This is classical conditioning. Question the narrative, experience social punishment, conform to the narrative, receive social reward. Do this for 4 years while your brain is still developing, and you create neural pathways that make conformity automatic. Then, students graduate and enter the workforce. And what do they find? The same ideology they learned in school, now expressed through corporate diversity programs, HR policies, and workplace culture. The language is identical. The concepts are the same. The moral framework matches perfectly. This reinforces what they learned in school wasn't just academic. It's how the real world works. It's what successful, enlightened people believe. Meanwhile, their media consumption reinforces the programming. Remember, 6 corporations control most media, and those corporations share the same progressive ideology that dominates universities and corporations. So the news they watch, the entertainment they consume, the social media they scroll through, all of it repeats and reinforces the same narratives they learned in school and see at work. This is the bubble. School taught them the ideology. Work reinforces it. Media conforms it or confirms it. Social media algorithms show them content that aligns with it. They're completely surrounded by sources that all say the same things. And because humans are social creatures who take cues from their environment, this total immersion makes the ideologies seem like objective reality rather than one perspective among many. Now add the social dimension. Their friends believe these things. Their romantic partners believe these things. Their social circles are built around shared progressive identity. Questioning the ideology means risking all of those relationships. The social cost of independent thought becomes prohibitively high. You can't just disagree on one issue. If you question the narrative, you're challenging the entire identity framework that your social world is built around. So people don't question. They conform. They perform the required rituals, the land acknowledgments, the pronoun declarations, the social media activism. They signal their membership in the tribe, and in return, they get social acceptance and belonging. This is how you create sheep. Surround them with a single ideology from every direction. Make conformity rewarding and dissent costly. Condition emotional responses that shut down questioning. Provide community and identity in exchange for obedience. The machine produces people who genuinely can't see outside the bubble. They're not consciously choosing to be sheep. They don't think of themselves as indoctrinated. They think they're educated, enlightened, on the right side of history. They don't recognize that their thoughts aren't their own because the programming has been so complete. The ideology has become their identity. The narratives have become their reality. The conditioning has become automatic. This is why they act like children. The system has kept them in a state of dependency where authority figures, professors, media personalities, democratic politicians tell them what to think and how to feel. They've never developed the skills that adults need: critical thinking, emotional regulation, ability to handle cognitive dissonance, willingness to examine their own beliefs, the capacity to admit that they're wrong. The system doesn't teach those skills because those skills produce adults who might question authority. The system needs children who will obey, so it keeps people in perpetual childhood, dependent on the left to tell them what's real and what's good. And this is also why they throw tantrums when challenged. Children don't have the emotional tools to handle frustration or disagreement. They melt down, they get hysterical, they lash out. The same thing happens with indoctrinated adults. Present them with facts that contradict their beliefs and they can't process it rationally. The conditioning triggers an emotional response. The tribal loyalty activates. The defense mechanisms engage. They call you names. They accuse you of hatred. They get upset enough that continuing the conversation becomes impossible. It's the adult version of child's tantrum. And it serves the same purpose. Make the situation so unpleasant that the other person backs down. The machine produces this behavior deliberately. Emotional, dependent, incapable of rational discourse. Perfect sheep who will follow wherever the left leads them. And the truly insidious part is that the sheep think that they're free. They think they're independent thinkers who arrived at their beliefs through reason and evidence. They don't recognize the programming because they've been programmed not to recognize it. They think conservatives are the ones who are brainwashed. They think they're the ones with the truth. They think anyone who disagrees is either stupid or evil. The programming is complete. The machine has produced exactly what it was designed to produce. Obedient sheep who believe anything, support anything, and attack anyone who threatens the system that controls them.
It's all throughout the media. The media has become a critical theory propaganda arm. So it's into all these institutions. They're turning the institutions from within. The idea, I mean, some people refer to this as like a cordyceps process. If you don't know what cordyceps is, it's this fungus that zombifies bugs and it makes them behave in certain ways, and then it grows out of their dead body into a fungus. It's what it does, is it infiltrates an institution, takes over the institution, kills it, wears its skin as a suit, and parades around while draining all of its resources, as Marxists would do.
Now let's talk about how the system maintains control once it's established, because capturing minds is one thing. Keeping them captured when reality constantly contradicts the programming is another thing entirely. The enforcement mechanism has several layers, all working together to prevent people from breaking free, even when they encounter evidence that should wake them up. First is the source delegitimization. The system teaches people that only approved sources are legitimate. Anything from outside the bubble is automatically suspect. Conservative media, right-wing propaganda, independent journalists, conspiracy theorists, alternative platforms, misinformation spreaders. Anyone who contradicts the narrative is dismissed based on the source alone, without ever engaging with the actual content. This is critical because it means people never have to confront contradictory evidence. They can dismiss it without examination. The programming has taught them that certain sources are illegitimate, so anything from those sources can be ignored. This is why showing indoctrinated people facts from conservative sources doesn't work. The facts never get considered because the source has been pre-delegitimized in their minds. Second is the social enforcement. When someone starts to question the narrative, their peers intervene. Friends express concern, family members worry, social media followers push back. This isn't usually aggressive or confrontational. It's gentle social pressure reminding you of the correct positions. Are you okay? You know that's not true, right? I'm worried about what you're reading. The message is clear. You're straying from the tribe. You're starting to think wrong thoughts. Come back to the approved positions or risk social isolation. For most people, this gentle pressure is enough. The fear of losing friends and community outweighs whatever doubt was starting to form. They retreat back to the comfort of the bubble and they stop questioning. Third is the emotional manipulation. When facts threaten the narrative, the system triggers emotional responses that override rational processing. Feel guilty for questioning indigenous land claims. That must mean questioning is wrong. Feel afraid that you might be racist? That must mean the anti-racist ideology is right. Feel angry at conservatives? That must mean they're evil and you shouldn't listen to them. These emotional responses are conditioned reactions, not organic feelings. But people don't recognize that. They trust their emotions and think the feelings prove the beliefs. Fourth is the narrative flexibility. When reality becomes impossible to ignore, the narrative adapts just enough to maintain credibility while preserving the core programming. Crime spikes after defund the police? Well, we didn't really mean abolish police completely. We just meant reform. Never mind that defund the police was explicit and literal when they were saying it. Inflation hurts everyone? Well, that's because of corporate greed, not monetary policy. Never mind that printing trillions of dollars inevitably causes inflation. The narrative shift to accommodate inconvenient facts without ever admitting the underlying ideology was wrong. This allows people to acknowledge reality while maintaining their beliefs. They don't have to choose between the evidence and the programming because the programming adapts to incorporate the evidence. Fifth is the complexity denial. When the issues are too complicated for simple narratives, the system teaches people to retreat to moral absolutes that don't require understanding. You don't need to understand economics to know that capitalism is bad and exploitation. You don't need to understand history to know that America is built on stolen land. You don't need to understand human nature to know that socialism would work if we just tried it right. The system provides simple moral frames that bypass the need for actual knowledge. This keeps people comfortable in their ignorance while feeling morally superior to anyone who tries to explain the complexities they're ignoring. Sixth is the heretic punishment. When someone does break free from the programming, when they publicly reject the ideology, the system makes an example of them. They get doxxed, they get fired, they get socially destroyed. Their former friends turn on them. They're labeled as grifters or sellouts or traitors. The punishment serves two purposes. It hurts the person who left, making it harder for them to build a new life outside the bubble, and it terrifies everyone still inside the bubble, showing them what happens if they dare to question. This is why you see so many stories of people who left the left and lost everything. Jobs, friends, family relationships, social media followings. The system is designed to make leaving so costly that most people won't do it, even when they know the ideology is wrong. All of these enforcement mechanisms work together to create a nearly inescapable trap. Information from outside is automatically dismissed. Social pressure prevents questioning. Emotional conditioning overrides reason. Narrative flexibility accommodates inconvenient facts. Complexity denial removes the need for understanding. And heretic punishment terrifies people into compliance. Breaking free from this requires more than exposure to contrary evidence. It requires overcoming all of these enforcement mechanisms simultaneously. You have to be willing to distrust approved sources. You have to be willing to risk social isolation. You have to be able to regulate your emotional responses. You have to recognize when the narratives are shifting to accommodate facts. You have to do the work to understand complexity, and you have to be brave enough to face punishment. Most people can't or won't do all that. The cost is too high. The system is too comprehensive. The enforcement mechanisms are too effective. And that's by design. The system is built to be nearly impossible to escape once you're captured. That's how it maintains control, even when reality constantly contradicts the programming.
This is a big, massive media story. We cannot overstate, we've talked about it a lot, the overall influence of the New York Times. The paper of record truly sets the agenda for so much media, certainly read by almost every TV producer and booker in the New York area and beyond. And you might remember this. After the election of 2016, when President Trump won, the paper did a deep dive into how they missed it. And they realized, among other failings, the paper did not have enough voices from all over the country, and on the opinion pages, did not have enough opinion writers and editors who represented other points of view. So among the new hires, a talented writer, her name is Bari Weiss. Weiss made an immediate splash. She often published centrist or even conservative columns, and she wasn't afraid to call out the traditional liberal media establishment. Here with Bill Maher.
We're both sort of fighting the outrage machine, you know, the professional outrage people. And let's just first get out because I saw you got into some hot water for nothing.
It's the narcissism of small differences. Anyone that departs from woke orthodoxy gets a lot more heat, in my opinion, than people on the actual right. I also think that offense taking is being weaponized. It is a route now to political power. Saying that I am offended is a way of making someone radioactive. It's a way of smearing their reputation, of making them a liability. Because once you tar someone as a racist or a misogynist or a fascist or whatever the word of the day is, it's a way of sort of taking them down a peg.
Yesterday, Bari Weiss did something no one else does. She quit her high-profile and high-paying job at the New York Times, and her resignation blasted the paper and what she describes as the real environment there. She writes, "A new consensus has emerged in the press, but perhaps especially at this paper, that truth isn't a process of collective discovery, but an orthodoxy already known to an enlightened few whose job it is to inform everyone else." Bari says social media has way too much influence as to what goes on the paper and in their website. Twitter is not on the masthead of the New York Times, but Twitter has become its ultimate editor. As the ethics and mores of that platform have become those of the paper itself has increasingly become kind of a performance space. Stories are chosen and told in a way to satisfy the narrowest of audiences, rather than to allow a curious public to read about the world and then draw their own conclusions. Bari said she was roasted personally on the company's inter-office Slack system and more, and that management never stood up for her with her colleagues. "I do not understand," she wrote, "how you've allowed this kind of behavior to go on inside your company in full view of the paper's entire staff and the public. And I certainly can't square how you and other Times leaders have stood by while simultaneously praising me in private for my courage. Showing up for work as a centrist at an American newspaper should not require bravery." It's a much longer letter than that. It's getting a ton of attention and I think commentary too. Very interesting stuff there at the New York Times.
So how do we fight this? How do we break a system this comprehensive and this effective at maintaining control? The first answer is that we can't break it for other people. They have to choose to break it. The enforcement mechanisms are too strong for external pressure to overcome. People have to reach a point where they're willing to pay the costs of leaving the bubble. But we can create conditions that make the choice more likely. We can be ready with alternatives when people start to question. We can plant seeds that grow into doubt. We can model a better way of thinking that appeals to people who are tired of the programming. Here's what it looks like in practice. First, You build independent institutions. The left controls universities, media, corporations, and the government. We can't take those back quickly. But we can build alternatives that operate outside their control. Independent media platforms, alternative education systems, businesses that don't enforce woke ideology, communities based on shared values rather than progressive conformity. These alternatives serve multiple purposes. They provide refuge for people who've already left the bubble. They demonstrate that life outside the system is possible. And they offer examples of different ways of organizing society that don't require leftist ideology. Second, maintain contact with people still in the bubble. Not everyone. We talked about knowing when to walk away from the truly unreachable. But for people who might be questioning, for family members who aren't hostile, for old friends who still respect you, maintain those relationships. Be the reasonable conservative in their lives. Be the person who doesn't match the caricature they've been taught. Be living proof that people outside the bubble aren't monsters. When their programming starts to crack, you want to be available. You want to be someone they can talk to without fear of judgment. You want to be the alternative they can turn to when they're ready to think differently. Third, focus on asking questions rather than making arguments. We covered this in detail, but it bears repeating. Direct challenge triggers the defense mechanisms. Questions bypass them. Make people think. Make them explain their positions. Make them confront inconsistencies, but do it gently, with genuine curiosity rather than gotcha smugness. The questions stick with people, even when they don't change their minds immediately. They create cracks in the programming that widen over time. Fourth, exploit the reality checks when they happen. Crime, taxation, business regulation, education failures, immigration consequences. These real-world experiences contradict the programming. When people encounter them, be ready to help them process what they're experiencing. Don't say, "I told you so." That triggers defensiveness. Instead, help them make sense of their experience in ways that validate what they're seeing while gently questioning the ideology that led to it. Yeah, it's frustrating when your tax bill is that high. Makes you think about whether we're getting good value for what we pay, right? What do you think would be different if we had lower taxes? You're acknowledging their experience, validating their frustration, and opening space for them to question the ideology without directly challenging it. Fifth, celebrate and support people who break free. When someone leaves the left, they're paying an enormous cost. They need to know they're not alone. They need community. They need practical help rebuilding their lives outside the bubble. Be that community. Be that support. Show them that leaving the plantation leads to freedom, not isolation. Help them find jobs if they got fired. Introduce them to other people who've made the journey. Give them the social belonging they lost when they left the tribe. This serves two purposes. It helps the individual who escaped, and it demonstrates to others still in the bubble that there's life after the left. That you don't have to stay trapped just because leaving is hard. Sixth, never stop telling the truth. The system relies on narrative control. It requires that approved messages dominate the information environment. Every time you speak truth, every time you refuse to comply with the programming, every time you point out that the emperor has no clothes, you create a small crack in the system. Those cracks add up. Enough people refusing to go along, enough voices speaking truth. Enough examples of the programming failing. Eventually, it becomes impossible to maintain the illusion. We're seeing this happen now. More people are questioning. More people are walking away. More people are recognizing the programming for what it is. The system is losing its grip. But it's not going to collapse on its own. It requires active resistance. People willing to speak up. People willing to build alternatives. People willing to help others escape. That's the fight. Not trying to destroy the left directly. We can't. They control too many institutions. But building alternatives, speaking truth, helping people escape, and accelerating the system's loss of credibility. This is a generational project. We're not going to win next year, but we can make progress. We can create momentum. We can build institutions that outlast the current regime. We can raise children who haven't been programmed. We can help adults break free and reclaim their ability to think. The machine is powerful, but it's not invincible. It requires constant maintenance. It requires people to keep believing the lies. It requires the enforcement mechanisms to keep working. And every person who breaks free, every institution we build outside their control, every truth we speak that can't be suppressed, these are acts of resistance that weaken the machine. We break it by refusing to be broken by it, by thinking independently, by speaking honestly, by helping others do the same, by building a better alternative that makes their control irrelevant. That's the fight, and it's one we can win.
I used to be on the left. I'm not on the left anymore. They're terrible. They hate discussion. Go to any of these pro-Palestinian marches, they won't talk to people like you. The first thing they're going to ask you, who are you from? What media? What media? If you've got views, stand up and be proud of them. Stand up and be proud of your views. Shouldn't matter where you're coming from. But the reason those people on those pro-Palestinian marches, they want to stifle debate. They don't want the truth to come out. Because you wouldn't care where the media's from. I don't care if you twist my words. I'm speaking and I'm talking from the heart. If you got the truth, you wouldn't be stifling debate. And the people who killed Charlie Kirk, they want to stifle debate. Those people on those marches, they tell you, don't talk to him, don't talk to him, don't talk to that one. I'm sure you've seen it. Because these people, they want to cancel everything. They want to cancel free thinking.
Is there one turning point for you or a pivotal moment where you remember thinking, hey, maybe what I've been taught all my life isn't what I actually believe?
There were several, but I can think of one in particular. I had been in a meeting, and in these leftist organizations, what you do when you have a meeting is you start off with community agreements typically. And you write these community agreements on the board, and it's sort of rules that you agree to before you go into these meetings. Everybody will state their pronouns, things like don't yuck my yum, or make space, take space. The coworker had gotten up and started writing these community agreements. She ended by saying, to all the white, cisgendered, heterosexual people in the room, don't speak at all. You've had the stage for long enough, or we're done listening to you. And I just looked around and I saw all these heads that were just nodding in agreement, and I went, oh, maybe I'm in the wrong room. maybe this isn't right. I had gone to the head of the organization and said, hey, just a concern here. What's with the racist part? I thought we weren't the racist side. I thought we were the tolerant side. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, you just simply don't know how oppressed you are.
As a black man who's been told his entire life by Democrats that Republicans are pure evil, I'm now going to share my top reasons why I am no longer a Democrat. Democrats, for some reason, love to take the side of ideas and thinking that make absolutely no sense. Example, any issue that is an idea or way of thinking that is an 80-20, they always go with the 20%. And what's crazy, the 80% will be right than the mother, but just so they can make it seem like they're ahead of the curve, man, they always go with the 20%, even if it's dead wrong, always. Reason number 2, Democrats do not believe in having a rational, reasonable conversation if you do not agree with them. And I'm sorry, but that's just not how human beings work. We are meant to have discourse and conversate and learn about each other and disagree and agree when we feel that way. And at the end of it, we go, hey, so where you want to go eat? That is the human experience. And I'm sorry, Democrats right now, it seems like all they think about is, oh my God, he disagreed with me. Oh my God, he doesn't agree with me. Oh my God, he disagreed with me. I'm sorry, but I cannot be a part of a party that's doing that, because that's not a party. That is a cult. And I don't want nothing to do with that.
Let me tie this all together so you understand exactly what we're dealing with. The left has built a comprehensive control system. Media consolidation provides narrative control. Historical lies like stolen land create guilt and delegitimization. Psychological conditioning produces dependent, childish thinking. Enforcement mechanisms prevent escape even when reality contradicts the programming. The system turns independent people into obedient sheep who believe whatever they're told, support policies that harm them, and attack anyone who tries to wake them up. It's designed to be nearly inescapable and self-reinforcing, but it's not invincible. People are breaking free. The programming is losing its grip, reality keeps contradicting the narratives, and eventually people notice. Our job is to accelerate that process. Build alternatives, speak truth, ask questions, help people escape, create conditions where the system loses credibility faster than it can adapt. This is the complete picture. The media consolidation that enables the narrative control, the historical lies that create the guilt, the conditioning that produces the sheep, the enforcement that maintains the control. All of it working together to capture your mind and keep you trapped. But once you see it, you can't be captured again. Once you understand the system, you can resist it. Once you recognize the programming, you can break free. And once you're free, you can help others escape. That's the mission. Understand the system, resist the programming, help others break free, build alternatives, never stop speaking the truth. The left has built an impressive machine, but it's a machine built on lies, and lies can't survive indefinitely when people are willing to speak truth. We're speaking truth, we're building alternatives, we're helping people escape, and we're winning. Check out Truth in the Darkness at titdusa.com. We're part of the alternative being built outside of their control. Independent media that tells the truth, that doesn't bow to the narrative, that helps people break free from the programming. Support the work, share the message, be part of the resistance. The system is comprehensive, but so is our response. They control the media, we build independent platforms. They push historical lies. We speak historical truth. They produce dependent children. We create independent adults. They enforce conformity. We celebrate freedom. This is the fight, and we're going to win it. I'll see you next time.